Welcome to this explainer. Buying or selling a home is usually the absolute biggest financial move any of us will ever make. Yet, the legal machinery actually churning away behind the scenes, it's frequently completely misunderstood. So today, we are breaking down those critical legal roles and, more importantly, the hidden risks packed into Malaysian sub-sale property transactions. We're going to map out exactly who does what and uncover a very common, potentially devastating pitfall that sellers literally walk right into every single day.
Right, let's kick things off with a simple, but honestly crucial question. When hundreds of thousands or even millions of ringgits are on the line, who is actually protecting your specific financial interests? It's really easy to just assume that the lawyers involved are just there to push paper and get the deal across the finish line for everybody. But the reality? A property transfer is inherently adversarial. Think about it. One party wants to acquire an asset with zero liabilities, and the other party wants to maximize their cash return with zero future legal ties. Those are two totally different goals.
To see how things can go sideways, we first need to establish the baseline of a healthy deal. This brings us to Section 1, the Subsale Balancing Act.
If you take a macro view of a fair, properly structured deal, you essentially have two distinct sides. On one side, you've got the purchaser's lawyer, whose main job is to draft the agreements. And on the flip side, you have the seller's lawyer, whose job is to actively review and amend those drafts. This right here is the absolute foundation of a balanced transaction. One lawyer builds the contract, while the other aggressively audits it to make sure their client isn't getting strong-armed into unfair terms. It's a vital system of checks and balances.
Let's break down exactly what these legal shields are actually doing behind the scenes, starting with Section 2, the buyer's legal shield.
In a typical Malaysian subsale, the buyer pays the primary fees to guarantee they get a clean, unencumbered title. Because they're footing that bill, their lawyer is basically in the driver's seat. They aren't just filling in blanks on a form. They're conducting rigorous land searches to make absolutely sure the property belongs to the seller and doesn't have any hidden caveats or legal disputes attached to it. They draft the initial sales and purchase agreement, or SPA. Then they handle the all-important Form 14A, which is the actual instrument that transfers ownership, all while managing the entire stamping process. The whole game plan here is preventative protection. Their one and only focus is ensuring the buyer gets exactly what they're paying for, without inheriting the seller's headaches.
Meanwhile, over on the other side of the table, your seller's lawyer is fiercely protecting your interests. They're your defensive line. Their checklist is just as critical, because they have to review and amend that buyer-drafted SPA. They make sure the payment terms, deposit handling, and timelines are actually fair to you, the vendor. If your property is still tied up at the bank, they handle the complex discharge of your existing mortgage. Oh, and they manage your required real property gains tax, or RPGT forms. Really, you should think of these steps as hidden legal and financial landmines that your lawyer is carefully disarming on your behalf.
But seeing these two separate sets of legal duties side by side often tempts sellers to ask a very dangerous question. Hey, if the buyer's lawyer is already doing the heavy lifting drafting the SPA, why not just use them and save on legal fees? And look, it's a totally understandable thought. Nobody really enjoys paying legal fees. But there's a crazy irony here, isn't there? We so often find ourselves tempted to risk an asset worth millions of ringgit just to save a few thousand at the very final hurdle.
That false economy leads us directly into Section 3, the self-represented seller trap.
So, in Malaysia, it's actually incredibly common for sellers to decide to skip hiring their own independent lawyer just to save some cash. This is officially known as the self-represented seller exception, and it usually pops up when folks assume a transaction is perfectly straightforward. If you make this call, the buyer's lawyer will still step in and prepare the SPA, so the deal keeps moving. On the surface, it looks like a total win-win. The deal gets done, and the seller keeps a little more money in the bank. But beneath the surface, you are in a highly vulnerable position. You see, there is a massive difference between administrative convenience and an actual legal shield. If you use the buyer's lawyer, sure, they'll happily help you out with the basic paperwork. They'll file your RPGT forms and they will witness your signatures. It feels like they're looking out for you. But, and this is a massive but, they absolutely cannot give you legal advice. If a dispute suddenly blows up over a delayed deposit, messy payment timelines, or an unexpected property defect, they cannot defend you. They're just administratively processing your forms. They are not your shield. Because it all boils down to one indisputable, cold, hard legal fact. That lawyer only represents the buyer, period. Their fiduciary duty, their absolute loyalty, and their legal obligation is 100% tied to the purchaser. If the deal hits a snag and your interests collide, that lawyer is legally bound to prioritize the buyer's protection over yours. By skipping your own representation, you've essentially agreed to play a high-stakes game where the referee secretly works for the opposing team. If things go wrong, you are entirely on your own.
Which perfectly tees up Section 4, why independent counsel matters.
Let's look at a very specific real-world scenario where this lack of representation goes from being kind of risky to potentially disastrous. We need to talk about the master title. A master title means a property where no individual or strata title has been issued yet, which is super common in newer developments or high-rises. Now, when a property is still under a master title, the transfer process suddenly turns into a severe headache for your timeline. It isn't just a quick signature anymore. You now have to obtain special consent directly from the developer to even proceed with the sale. Suddenly, you're stuck clearing a massive bureaucratic hurdle.
Because of all this added developer bureaucracy, strict legal requirements, and the inevitable delays that come with it, flying blind without your own lawyer is a massive liability. The source material is explicitly clear on this. Master title transactions make independent legal representation highly recommended for both sides. The buyer's lawyer, they're going to aggressively push to get that developer consent in a way that strictly protects the buyer. Without your own lawyer there to negotiate the terms, manage the developer's specific conditions, and ensure your timeline doesn't get completely derailed, you are leaving your asset completely exposed to severe risk.
So I'll leave you to ponder this as we wrap up. When dealing with what is almost certainly your most valuable financial asset, is saving a tiny fraction of a % on legal fees really worth risking the entire investment? Sure, you might save a little cash up front by using that self-represented exception, but you are trading away your shield, your voice, and honestly, your peace of mind. A truly balanced transaction requires two advocates. If things go south, can you really afford to leave your side of the table completely empty?